Alright guys, HyDra again today. Hope you're all doing well and enjoying your day so far. Big questions raised over the last couple of days, especially given OpTic's current dominance, apart from when they play FaZe, of this online period of the CDL, as to what may happen if one of the OpTic players was to potentially be unwell. Some players in the league have a substitute locked in, as did Gunless, for example, when Flames was on their substitute bench of the roster. Now they've put him into the starting team. What would happen if someone on OpTic happened to be unwell? Who would they put in as their substitute? Who's officially on paper, and who might potentially want to return if the opportunity was there? Very much intrigued to your thoughts in the comments below. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new as always. I would greatly appreciate it. Firstly, Call of Duty 2025. This year's game is going to be COD 2024. Black Ops Gulf War, we thought it was going to be called. Now we're pretty sure it's going to be Black Ops 5 or maybe Black Ops 6, but that would be a bit strange. So I'm guessing Black Ops 5 is the most likely name for the game as it stands. But next year's game is also going to be a Treyarch game. It may not be made precisely by Treyarch. It may be made by, like, you know, Raven or some sort of other studio that's kind of putting it together, but it will be Treyarch inspired at the very least, because the report is today that COD 2025 is going to be a direct Black Ops 2 sequel. This was the rumor a while ago that it was going to be like Black Ops 2.5, and look, I don't want to get my hopes up too much, but I mean, listen to this. Set in 2030, of course, because Black Ops 2 was set in 2025 famously, so the idea that COD 2025 comes out in the year that Black Ops 2 was set in as a sequel actually makes a lot of sense, to be honest, from like a marketing POV, I guess. A mix of new maps and remastered Black Ops 2 maps. Say it again, round-based zombie, and then classic pick 10 creator class. Now, I'm hoping this is true, just because we've heard this before. We've heard rumors that, oh yeah, they're bringing back pick 10, and then someone comes in and says, well, it doesn't really fit with our vision of Warzone and Gunsmith and all this, and therefore we're going to boycott it or veto it. Hopefully that doesn't happen. Challengers Cups as well around the world. This is the European one. Clutch Rain won this one. So Twiz, Denza, Pack and Cobra. So interesting to see, of course, Cobra get the win. He was linked to some time to potentially joining Surge alongside aBeZy, alongside aBeZy, and basically reforming in a Wobobob's team from last year. But Denza's kind of like this guy. The amount of times he's retired and then he's come back and then he's retired again, and now he's come back and he's won. I thought that was very commendable. In the North American side, though, we did have, you know, maybe some interesting results as well, because the champions in the end were Hamza Frosty and the Spartans again. So they won the Elite the other day, Spart, Wiz, Fire, and they've now got the victory effectively a couple of days in a row. So these guys right now are making a rather serious case to be contenders come Toronto. As I've said before, this Toronto event is very important, not just for the pros, but also for who wins the challenger side. We saw what happened in Boston, right? FaZe back won, and those guys, Asim and Kremp, were picked up basically immediately. The other guys, Brack and Exceed, were not, but, you know, effectively that's how it works. The same thing happened after Major 2, when 04, whatever, like those guys ended up winning, they reverse swept, and therefore they get picked up, right? Because a lot of the pro teams, they don't really actually watch challenges, they just look who wins, and then they sign those guys, which is maybe a good idea, but it doesn't necessarily tell the whole picture of actually what's happening. There could be a player that actually is better, but he came top 3, but yet a lot of the pro teams don't even consider that. They just look at who won. So you got to win. That's kind of how it goes at the end of the day. There was frustration, of course, around the Face It system this past weekend. Bance was actually following up on this because we saw that people got forfeited from the Cup for having the wrong Activision IDs, although effectively a lot of these players had asked for them to be changed and updated, but Face It said, no, we'll get to it, don't worry. And then when they didn't get to it, they then got forfeited for doing so. The funny thing is that apparently if you were like, you know, if you got away with it, they now allowed people to change. So as apparently as Vance says here, Face It forfeited people for wrong IDs, not allowed to change them mid-tourney, but have now allowed people to change if needed heading into day 2. These people aren't real, they're actual morons, he says. And obviously him and Arcetes were not so happy about this. So again, more strange decisions coming out of the Face It guys that now run the COD side, especially for challenges. It's understandable there'd be some teething issues here just because these guys have not done COD before, as, let's say, Game Battles has been for the last several years. So there was always going to be problems, but the fact that the problems are continuing this long is no doubt somewhat frustrating. Let's have a look at some numbers then from this stage so far. As time goes on here, we'll see a clearer picture being generated, and, well, Cellium has a 1.31 in hard points, CleanX with a 1.2, that's the second highest. Ghosty as well. I didn't really talk talk about Ghosty earlier today when we talked about Boston, just because I didn't really mention Thieves. But Ghosty, man, this guy has been so impressive. I think we knew this was going to be the case when he came into the league on OpTic, that he was going to be a mainstay. I guess my question is, can Thieves hold on to him next season? Because he's clearly their best player. Thieves are going to, maybe they'll make champs, they may not. I think they will make champs. I do believe that they are strong enough to do so on the evidence they currently have, and, you know, they're in the ballpark for making it. I think they probably will have enough in the end. Ghosty's been their best player, and he might be a top 10 player in the world or in the entire league. Like, that is an argument right now, looking at the players in the league, and you think, well, which one player outside of the top 4 would I put in the top 4, kind of, you know, top 16 players, or certainly even top 10 players? You're looking at Ghosty, you're looking at maybe Gwyn, and that's probably about it, right? So yeah, Ghosty's been really good. Thieves, they don't have the money they used to have, so I guess that has been part of the question as to whether they can actually hold on to him, because if another team, let's say, you know, a New York or a Toronto or something, really wants to get Ghosty in, and maybe OpTic even, okay, that's not going to happen just because of the kind of chemistry that apparently wasn't really there, but maybe that's changed with Ghosty to some extent. I don't know. I just think he's been really good for Thieves, deserves the credit that he's getting right now, and Thieves will need to try and hold on to him next season, which I think they probably will do, and try and build around him and build up what they can put together over the coming seasons. In Search and Destroy, aBeZy leads the line. Flames has dropped down to a 1.52 now, but he started off rather well. ReeaL is here as well, alongside Standy and Dashy in control. Scrappy leads the line, so lots of different players represented here. Actually, pretty much on every single list we have just seen, a rather different selection of players, but we do have the number 1 is still Cellium, so he's at a 1.24, Scrappy's at a 1.21. To be fair, Simp isn't here, just because earlier today I mentioned the MVP combo between Scrappy, between Simp, who gets it. You know, Cellium obviously is never going to be far off that conversation, and Scrappy deserves to be here as well. But Gwyn is 3rd, Skyz is 4th, and Pred is 5th. So interesting that Pred has a 1.12, despite the fact that I've seen lots of criticism for Pred over the last few days with his play so far at this stage. The KD, of course, does not tell the entire picture, but it is worth thinking about. Quick couple of clips here from Temp if you guys think this might be hacking or not, because here he goes, comes around the corner here, and this guy, well, certainly an interesting pre-fire and pre-aim from this guy, given the fact that ErikBooM, his teammate, is right in front of him, and he just comes swinging around the corner. Interesting decision making there from, that's Yuli, isn't it? Yeah, very interesting. And then this was another kill here where, yeah, so they're playing against Yuli and co in this moment, and then look at the pre-fire that happens here. I mean, wow, Yuli just absolutely smokes him cross map. So what do you guys think about this accusation? Yuli was actually in the league on Ravens, right? This one, I'm not gonna lie, is kind of interesting. Like, the fact that you're hopping up here and immediately getting shot at and dying, you know, Yuli must have been pre-aiming that. As Temp says, like, is this just a ray gun? What is this pre-fire? Because this kill is, you know, he probably saw him, to be fair. The second one, when he hops up on the dumpster and then just gets immediately zapped, like, you know, it feels a bit interesting. So Temp's like, wow, is this guy hacking or something? I think that's highly doubtful, to be honest. The ray gun is just the ray gun, I think, is the evidence that we can glean from this. But also wanted to mention what Scump had to say on the OpTic substitute situation, because every team needs a substitute. Some teams don't really have one, or don't have a defined one. Some teams have done for the last few years. They've had an actual proper substitute. Back in MW19, you had to have 2 substitutes, which was stupid, to be fair, but that was the rule. And OpTic Gaming Los Angeles kind of famously had Goonjar and Chino as their 2 substitutes, which was quite the timeline, really. And it was the same with OpTic, right? They had General and, was it Embos, who was technically their second sub? So it was a strange time. But over the last few years, you have to have a substitute, technically, but you don't necessarily have to have like an official actual player that just sits there the entire time. So what most teams do is just have their coach. They get to save some money, and it makes a fair bit of sense. Certainly if your coach is a former player, then why not? But if push comes to shove and a substitute is required, I think it can be possible to get, you know, something signed that allows a player to sub in on relatively short notice. It may be more complicated than that, but I think that it might be possible that if, you know, someone needs to sub in for whatever reason, maybe you get a piece of paper signed and then it can potentially happen. So I'm guessing Karma is the official substitute for OpTic, as they don't have, you know, anyone technically there as well. General isn't their substitute any longer. But Scump is kind of talking about this and saying, well, you know, don't count me out just yet.
If Scump spawns in, if one of the boys gets sick, I don't know what would happen. You might be seeing Damon suit up. Don't disrespect me, man. I'm not. It's just I'm not sure about the official. Don't bend the rules to get you in there. Yeah, like if they'd let you play.
Oh, if they let me play. I thought you were saying I'd be
No. I'm saying like because Damon's their official sub.
Is he?
I think so. I think they'd let you play. They'd figure out a way to sign you to an emergency sub.
They wouldn't
just sign a napkin.
There's no way they would let me play.
You think that they would? Wait, who?
They'd let you play.
They wouldn't let me play.
You think they wouldn't let you play? You're fine.
They wouldn't let me.
I promise you.
So it's unlikely to be necessary, but we've seen this instance with Boston, of course, over the last few days. Beans gets an injury, he's unwell, unable to play. Shawnee comes in, who I'm guessing was their like official sub or something, but you know, they could have had someone else. They've got players on their academy roster, but no, they put Shawnee in. The coach of the team, of course, a former player, played earlier this season. So if OpTic were to require someone, I would love to see Karma play a series, by the way. Like, that would be great to watch. And obviously you're hoping that nothing happens to any guys in the league, and therefore they can all play perfectly healthy the entire time. But if someone gets unwell or whatever, or something happens, then there might be a requirement for it. And also, let's say you're OpTic, maybe you even, okay, there's no benefit in trying it really, but if let's say someone is away or they've got some complications, it's not the end of the world, is it? Like, they're already killing it online, there really isn't much to gain. Already they take these online series not especially seriously. The same thing with New York, right? Last year, you guys might remember, when New York subbed in Wardy for a series, they got criticised quite heavily because it's like, why would you just, you know, do that for no good reason? And Wardy hasn't really had a good season this year in challenges to kick on from that. But they did that. They subbed in Wardy for an online qualifier series, and they still won the events at the end of the year, including champs. So, you know, I don't think it would be the end of the world if someone did need to sub in, and it'd be cool to see Karma back in the server. But also, if Scump is there, which he is, and Scump is still a monster and could easily compete in this game on a very high level if he wanted to, his prospect of back in the team would be very fascinating. I don't know if Scump would want to, just because, you know, like, he's already played his final series, and maybe there's nothing much to gain from him coming in and having a bit of a hard time against a good team, theoretically, because the most recent series he played, the one before he retired, right, he slammed Zinni, didn't he, in that series on MW2 last year against Boston, and yeah, that was pretty ugly for Zinni at the end of it. Like, so he ended that series at like a 1.25, and, you know, he probably doesn't want to come back, but if it was absolutely necessary, and also, if, you know, it was a player like Pred, for example, I think Scump could sub in there, do a really good job, or with Kenny, and there was even talk about what if Scump was in, like, the flex role instead of somebody else on this roster anyway, and it was like, you know, maybe Pred, Shotzzy, and Scump, and then, like, either Kenny or Dashy. I don't know, it's probably not going to happen, but it would be interesting to see. I did want to share as well just the series that OpTic have played so far. Of course, they lost this one to FaZe. They're beating all these other teams, because their record, you know, they're 16-7 with a 5-1 win-loss, which is fine, obviously, it's great, but it's not as good as FaZe. I mean, FaZe are 18-3, which is pretty deadly, and you got to consider the teams they've played. Yes, it's online, LAN is always a different beast, but, you know, FaZe are just a very heavy favourite for this tournament, because OpTic have played Surge, Legion, Miami, Boston, Gorillas. Like, that's not really an especially impressive run of teams on paper, whereas FaZe have played Rocker, OpTic, Toronto, New York. They played all of those teams and lost 2 maps combined over those 3 series. Then Vegas, then Ravens. So, you know, maybe, okay, it's pretty different to be fair, but to be fair, a lot of these teams that are down the bottom, I kind of consider them to be all in the same kind of category, because none of them are especially good. This also from Brian Stats, last COD Champs appearance for each active pro, because some of these guys that are in the league now, that are back in the league, they haven't been at Champs for a long time, and some of these players, let's say Pentagrxm, they were at Champs in 2019, because back then it was a different story. 32 teams, very different world championship to what we have today. And some of these fellas who are active players, such as Afro is an active player, and, you know, I'm guessing as the substitute of that team, he would be there in, you know, in, let's say, where's it, Dallas, right, for the World Championship, if Thieves qualify, which they probably will, just in case anything was to happen. So I guess that might be a Champs appearance, depending on the way you want to look at it. But Fellow, 2018, that's his most recent appearance. Gunless, 2019, like, these guys haven't been at Champs, lots of them, in the entire CDL era. And, well, we'll see if any of them actually make that one work. So very much enjoyed your thoughts on all this stuff in the comment section below. Hit the like button if you enjoyed. Subscribe if you're new. Take care. And I'll see you next time.